The Snow White live-action film has been a disaster for Disney, and delaying the trailer's release or even the movie itself didn't help their case at all. Most of the backlash centers around the fact that Disney has fundamentally changed the story, as highlighted by internet favorite Rachel Zegler. But why did people react so differently to Maleficent, which also made significant changes to the original animation? Maleficent was the first of many live-action adaptations Disney produced over the past decade, and despite its numerous changes, it was generally well received. So why is Snow White being torn apart even before its premiere? The main problem isn't Rachel Zegler. Though she has contributed to some of the negative attention, the real issue lies with Disney and its policies over the past decade. Disney's live-action phase began with Maleficent, which made significant changes to the original Sleeping Beauty story. But there is a crucial difference between the changes in Maleficent and those in Snow White. Disney movies have always been a focal point in the entertainment industry, especially as pioneers of feature-length animated films. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Snow White was the first of its kind. As Disney princesses became a brand, people began to nitpick. With the rise of feminism in the 70s and 80s, it became clear that the ideal woman depicted in those early films didn't align with the values of later eras. A sweet and kind woman who cleans, cooks, and takes care of the tired men wasn't going to resonate with modern audiences. For a while, Disney seemed to know how to adapt. In the 90s, during the Disney Renaissance, they introduced princesses who were much more complex and aligned with contemporary ideals. That's where they should have continued, but then with the revival era, they started sacrificing storytelling for the sake of ideology. Disney saw an opportunity to make money off something already popular while also rewriting history. Maleficent was the first of these efforts, but its changes worked because they addressed flaws in the original storytelling. Historically, Sleeping Beauty was a failure for Disney. It was so poorly received that they didn't make another princess movie for almost 2 decades. The rewrite in Maleficent was a tool to fix the original story's lack of character motivation and growth. Aurora remained the sweet, naive girl hiding in the forest, but they added a twist. Aurora's daring nature leads to a bond with one creature that everyone fears, Maleficent. Her innocence and gentle manner were consistent with the 1959 version, while Maleficent's new story, motivation, and overall arc elevated the original tale. And it worked. I enjoyed it myself. When I look at Maleficent and how it reimagined the story of Sleeping Beauty, I can see why it worked so well. The changes made to Aurora's character didn't just alter her for the sake of change. They added layers that enriched her story. Aurora remained the sweet, innocent girl we all remember, but the film deepened her character by giving her more agency and developing her relationship with Maleficent. The twist didn't take away from what made her special. Instead, it gave her a more active role in her story, while still respecting the essence of her character. In contrast, the changes being made to Snow White in the upcoming live-action remake feel like they strip away some of the qualities that made her so iconic in the first place. For example, in the original, Snow White's kindness and humility are beautifully showcased in the scene where she sweeps the dwarf's cottage. It's a simple act, but it speaks volume about her character. She's someone who finds joy in helping others, no matter the task. And she's also taking charge of her own life. These men are going to give her a shelter. In exchange, she's going to cook and clean for them. But in this new version, it seems like Snow White's motivation are being changed, and not for the better. From what we've seen and heard, it looks like she's telling the dwarfs that they have to clean their cottage themselves, and she doesn't take part in this teamwork in any way. So I don't see any reason why these dwarfs might want to shelter her or help her. Cinderella, for another example, stayed true to the original story, and it's one of the best live-action adaptations because of that loyalty. But after that, things went off the rails. Disney became determined to right the wrongs, even when the complaints didn't make any sense. They threw out everything, including good storytelling, for the sake of ideology. We all knew Disney had diversity problems, especially in its early years, and that the princesses from that era era had become too stereotypical. Disney was determined to change that, but instead of creating new stories that would fit the backgrounds of these princesses, they simply changed the race of existing characters. When people said corsets were bad, they let the actress go without one, even though it ruined one of the most iconic dresses in the company's history. To make a long list of problems short, instead of doing what they did with Maleficent, Disney decided to make everything about the company's ideologies. The backlash against Snow White didn't happen overnight. It's been building up over time. Rachel Zegler got caught in the crossfire, but she's not the root cause. We certainly can't deny the fact that Zegler's disrespect to the movie is another layer of bad luck that Disney has brought to themselves. When I look at her interviews that blew up the internet, I can almost hear Disney's behind-the-scenes discussions. They're not saying these things out loud for obvious reasons, but they're putting these policies into their work. Watching her, I honestly thought she was 16 or 17, and I was shocked to find out she's actually 23. She gave me Millie Bobby Brown vibes, a sudden wave of hate because she wasn't watching how she was speaking. Just as I didn't support the hate against Millie, I don't support the hate against Zegler either. I believe she embodies what the company wants to do, but she does it with less subtlety. Zegler has said,
there's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
And her PR team quickly stepped in, and she spoke more carefully in later interviews. I'm sure if Elle Fanning was bad-mouthing the original cartoon, she also would have received backlash, because people who are here surely love the cartoon and don't like being insulted. Here's the thing. People love these stories as they are. Even if they're not perfect, they're nostalgic to them. If Disney wants to right the past wrongs, they can't just change the stories. It's simple. Write new stories that align with your company's current guidelines. By changing things in the live-action adaptations, they're only doubling their problems, because it's obvious that they don't care one bit about storytelling, and they're starting to do so even with new and original works as well. Animations like Wish are prime examples of that. And it's not like a company as big as Disney doesn't have the resources to hire great writers. They absolutely do. The problem is that they care so much less about storytelling, the very thing that could give their projects real meaning and lasting impact. Disney made a great statement with Inside Out 2. Whenever we want to, we can tell good stories. And yes, I know this partially because Pixar is involved, but if these kinds of projects are so successful, why not do more of them? Why not focus on what made Disney iconic in the first place? Great stories with memorable characters, rather than trying to rewrite the past. Despite all the storytelling problems Cinderella might have, we love the story, and it was well received because it didn't try to rewrite anything in the story. It just gave it another form of life. It was respectful in all ways, and it was okay to see an actual white woman portray Aurora and Ella. It was actually the best choice because of the character's original portrayal. We still don't know what the Snow White movie might be. It could be identical to the animation, but I believe even that can't save the movie, thanks to the hideous-looking CGI dwarves, the evil queen's costume, which looks like a plastic bag, and Snow's dress, which seemed like a failed middle school project. First, as a non-white person, I have to state this. Snow White needs to be white as snow. No hate towards Zegler in any ways, but she isn't. Disney is changing yet another beloved princess race for the sake of diversity. If only they could write some stories like Coco or Mulan. I've always appreciated how other Snow White adaptations like Mirror Mirror and the TV series Once Upon a Time have managed to put their own spin on the classic tale while staying loyal to its core element. These versions, despite introducing new twists, remain true to the original story that we all know and love. A young girl, white as snow, who gets caught up in her stepmother's jealousy, and in her quest to escape, she finds new friends and ultimately love. In Mirror Mirror, Lily Collins brought a fresh energy to Snow White, yet she still embodied the innocence and purity that defined the character. The film added humor and a more modern sensibility, but at the end of the day, it respected the essence of Snow White. a girl whose beauty and kindness triumph over evil. Similarly, Once Upon a Time introduced more complex and layered Snow White through Jennifer Goodwin's portrayal. This show took the character in new directions, but it never lost sight of who Snow White is at her core, a girl who, despite facing immense challenges, remains kind-hearted and courageous. The show allowed Snow White to grow and evolve, but her story is still centered around the familiar themes of jealousy, friendship, and love. I remember watching Once Upon a Time and loving the twist it gave to the story. Not only was Snow and Charming's love story beautifully portrayed through many obstacles, but it also added a darker side to the evil queen's story with the Snow and her love life. Yet the core of Snow White, the kind-hearted and brave girl, always stayed the same. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.